Fans of Neo Geo MVS hardware have been treated to some really cool enhancements over the years. From custom superguns to a universal BIOS to virtual memory cards and even a complete open source kit that allows you to consoleize an MV1C motherboard. That open source kit is my favorite way to play Neo Geo games and provides the best quality analog output I've ever seen from a Neo Geo. But what if you could get digital output from an MV1C? Let's take a look at a true digital-to-digital HDMI output kit for the Neo Geo. There's a lot of things I'll be talking about in this video that I've actually covered in previous videos, so before I begin, I just want to give a quick rundown of everything I'll be talking about. First, the focus of this video is the CPSDigiAV board, formerly known as the CPS HDMI. This board was designed by Markus, the same person who created the open source scan converter. It was originally designed for Capcom arcade boards, but Markus recently ported the code to the Neo Geo. At the moment, it's only compatible with the MV1C motherboard, as that's the only Neo Geo that outputs both audio and video digitally. Now, it's possible that this could be installed in other revisions of MVS boards and maybe even the AES consoles, but we would need to determine what exactly are the digital video points to tap, as well as create a custom analog to digital converter for the audio side. And that should end up being about the same quality as a high-end audio solution for the Neo Geo now, so it would be a good solution. It's just something that's going to be a bit tedious, and we'd absolutely update on the website, and of course I'll pin a comment here if other revisions are added. As far as the rest of this video goes though, all of the features that I showcase will be exactly the same. The only difference would be installation. So definitely keep an eye on RetroRGB.com for updates, but the rest of this video would apply regardless of what model revision you use. It just is going to be one more step of installation to add that extra board. And lastly, I'll be showing the CPSDigiAV installed in the OpenMVS, as it's a project centered around the same MV1C motherboard. I want to make sure that everybody knows it's not only compatible with the OpenMVS, it's just a kit I have on hand and I think it's going to look great for shots in this video. And please check out my video on that for all the info you'd need on the project. Okay, so now that you've been brought up to speed as to what to expect for this project, let's check out a basic overview of the installation. Installation of the kit isn't too hard, but probably isn't for beginners. Markus has instructions on his GitHub, but I'd like to point out a few things. First, and most importantly, you'll need to flash the board with the Neo Geo version of the firmware. It's the same exact board as the CPS kits, which is why it's still called the CPSDigiAV, but the firmware needs to match whatever you're installing it to. It's the same exact process as flashing pretty much any device with a USB blaster, so it's pretty easy, but the boards need to be powered, so you might want to wait until it's fully installed to flash it. For the physical installation, you'll need to make sure the wires connecting the board are as short as possible, and make sure to use a shielded coax cable for the clock line. Exactly like with the CPS installations, wires that are too long will result in video signal dropouts, or it won't work at all. As a result, the easiest mounting location will route the board in a way that positions the HDMI connector just off to the side. This should work well if you're modifying an original MV1C shell or existing supergun case. It's also a perfectly fine location for the OpenMVS project. I just used a right-angle HDMI cable and I think it looks fine. That's totally up to you though. I think it's a neat way to show off the new HDMI mod, but I imagine other people will like a much cleaner look. Lucky for us, we have choices, and Avram is now creating a second case option for the OpenMVS project he's calling the OpenMVS HD. This mounts the HDMI board in a slightly different position with a bracket, and please excuse these shots as this is a prototype made before the bracket was released, but this will provide the room people need to run an HDMI cable around to the back. Avram also designed a new rear I/O plate that accommodates the HDMI port, as well as the settings buttons, all while retaining the full functionality of the analog video output. It basically makes it look like a factory HDMI Neo Geo. So now that we've seen a basic installation overview, let's see the different features it has. After installation, or if you bought an OpenMVS HD kit with one pre-installed, Simply plug it in and start playing. As you can see, simultaneous dual output of the RGB and HDMI ports is supported, and it's the perfect setup for streamers or just people who use both digital and analog displays. To access the features, press and hold the menu button for a few seconds, then release. These extra buttons and the features are the exact same options as with the CPS boards, but I wanted to show them here anyway. First are the resolution options. Here's 720p, and this is good if you have a native 720p panel. I think the other resolutions will be better for most setups though, so I would really stick with this just with 720p displays. Next is a 1280 by 1024 resolution, which is perfect if you have a 4x3 LCD monitor, or if that's a resolution that works well with your capture card for streaming setups. After that is a 1080p resolution with a 4x scale. I actually prefer this for streaming since I can add an overlay without cutting off any screen space, but I never actually play this way when gaming on an LCD. There's just too much wasted space on the top and bottom of the screen. Here's by far my favorite mode, 1080p 5x. I have a whole video dedicated to why this is often best for home consoles, and I think it's also the best choice for the Neo Geo. The menu option right below it toggles the offset or vertical position, and you could line it up to have pretty much the same cutoff as a CRT. You might have something like the press start text cutoff from the very top, but usually it's nothing that actually affects gameplay. Here's a good example. There's a tiny bit more cutoff on the flat panel, but with scan lines turned on, this looks almost identical to the CRT. We'll get back to scanlines in a bit, and please check out my video on 5x mode for more info. The next resolution is 1200p, first as a 1600 by 1200 4x3 resolution, then a 1920 by 1200 widescreen resolution. This resolution's good if you have a panel that's 1200p or higher and don't want to cut off any information from the top or bottom. Even if you prefer 5x mode, if you have a 1200p native resolution panel, I'd use this mode as it's always better to run your display at its native resolution. Same with the next mode. If you have a native 1440p panel, definitely use this. If you have a 4K TV, it might be worth trying too, just to see if you like it better than 1080p 5x. If I found a game that cut off just too much to enjoy in 1080p 5x mode, this is the one that I would use. The black bars on the top and bottom aren't too big, you get a really sharp picture, and overall I think it's better than 1080p 4x, except for streaming like I mentioned before. The next output mode is 240p. Yep, that's right, the HDMI port will output 240p, then you could use a zero lag digital to analog converter to connect the output to either an RGB or component video input on a CRT. These converters are really cheap, and there's a new VGA to SCART device that'll let you connect the 240p HDMI output into a VGA converter into an RGB SCART input. So essentially, with a few cheap adapters, you'll get direct RGB from this with safe voltage. Now, if your goal was just RGB output, simply using a supergun is much easier than installing one of these kits, but I think a realistic use case for this mode would be someone who wants an HDMI-only version of the OpenMVS HD to use mostly on flat panels, but might occasionally connect it to a CRT via component video. Whatever you use this mode for, if at all, it's just cool that the option's there in the first place. The next mode is 480p, designed for use with VGA monitors through a cheap HDMI to VGA converter. 480p looks good on this multi-format PVM, but here's where scanlines really make a difference. Adding fake horizontal scanlines to a VGA CRT monitor makes it look almost identical to a 240p RGB monitor. This means you can find an old VGA CRT for cheap or even free, connect this, and have it look pretty much like a PVM. I have a whole video dedicated to RGB on VGA monitors, so please check that out if you're interested. There's a few other options to tweak the scanlines, and I suggest just giving it a try and seeing if any options look good to you. Some people can dial things in and feel like it's a perfect representation of a CRT, while others just prefer the sharp look of the image and use CRTs when they want scanlines. There's no right answer, just do whichever you prefer. People running this through a stereo should note that there's the same quad stereo option as with the CPS firmware. If you have a home theater, this can send the audio to all 4 speakers. Basically, just toggle the options and see what sounds best to you. Lastly, there's a setting to adjust the HDMI output. This setting could be set to full or limited color space, as well as a DVI mode if needed. Check your display requirements to see what's the best match for you. Then, once you've got everything configured, save your settings, and every time you power on the console, it'll default to whatever you left off with. If you only want to toggle scan lines, holding the second select button will turn those on and off, skipping the menu. It's all pretty straightforward and should have every option you need. So overall, I love this new HDMI kit, and I think it looks and sounds absolutely awesome in a Neo Geo, but I want to let everybody know that you don't need this kit to have a good Neo Geo experience. Using a quality supergun with a scaler will get you a great output, and there's some awesome MVS consoleized solutions for people who want the low cost of MVS carts, but with the feel of an AES home console. Heck, if original hardware doesn't matter, there's even an excellent Neo Geo core on the Mister, and of course, software emulation options can range from free to really awesome custom solutions that feel like an arcade machine. This product is for us crazy folk who insist on squeezing every bit of performance out of original hardware. And for us, it's totally worth it. So now I'd like to close this video out showing some examples of how good this thing looks and sounds. Now, of course, internet streaming services compress the heck out of these videos, especially for smaller channels. So if you'd like, pick your favorite and let me know which one you'd like me to upload as an uncompressed capture. There's a few here, so I'll just pick the one that seems to be everybody's favorites. And I'm going to start out with one of my favorites that does a great job panning the stereo audio, as well as looks really cool too. So here we go.
Round 2, fight!
どうだい、かっこよかったろ。
Round 1.
MGR 色のピッチャー
Get ready.
They existed. Those blinded by ambition. Those consumed with vengeance. But here, they do not exist. Only winners and losers here. For here, the mighty rule. Garou, Mark of the Wolves.
1、2、3、4。そうです。
Round 1.
Fight! アゲット。アゲット。どれや。サッカス。どれや。ゲンタ。アゲット。アゲット。ゲンタ。アゲット。どれや。アゲット。どれや。アゲット。アゲット。
Well, that's it for this time. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider signing up for any of the support services or helping out in any way, including ways that are completely free for you. Check the support link for more info. Also, if you'd like to be kept in the loop of everything going on in the retro gaming scene, check out the weekly podcast available as a video and everywhere audio-only podcasts can be found. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.